Hi everyone. I have nothing new or original of my own to present. I just wanted to share some of the things that I learned about at AMATIC and some of the things that I came back thinking, wow, that's really amazing. I think this is really interesting. Some of the talks I didn't even get to, but if I can manage all my open things, I will show you how everyone can access that without any, just on your own. So here, I will try and get started. Here is the link to the conference proceedings. And all you have to do is Google AMATIC Conference Proceedings 2014. And you can get to links to all of the talks that they have, handouts or PowerPoints. Okay, so you can see it in the upper right-hand corner, AMATIC Conference Proceedings 2014. And I wanted, especially for the administrators, I wanted to give you some numbers to write down for the session numbers to look up, and I'll have them briefly. Pedal to the Metal, Accelerating Developmental Math is S11. It's actually right here, by Lori Austin. I've already opened it. I'm afraid to find it. Here it is. And they talk about their programs. Here's some names that are pretty common. Yuri Tresman, and looking at the summit, and looking at course sequences, which is your pretty standard. And so they have information about what they've done here. This was not a talk I attended, but it's certainly information worth reviewing as a resource. Okay, Fast Track at St. Charles Community College, S24, but they did not have a live link. So I don't have anything on that one. One of the ones that was my favorite, which I have my own notes, and I'm going to do the bad teacher thing and read to you all about them in just a minute. This is one that left me with a real wow feeling. It's called Accelerating Underprepared Students to and Through College Statistics. One of the things I loved most about this talk was they left their college statistics class alone, but they just created a one-semester prerequisite course, looking back and saying, what do students need to be successful in this college statistics course? And then they would let them in that course without having had college algebra as a prerequisite. So I've got some things to show you about that. College Math Ready in a Semester, S92. Bypassing Placement and Improving Outcomes. This is another one that I did not go to, and it looks pretty crazy. But I wanted to make sure you all had this as a resource in case you were interested in reading. College Math Ready in a Semester, S92, and it's bypass placement and improve outcomes. I don't know why I like this image, but it's kind of funny. Tracking California. Okay, and then last one, tips and tricks for successful pathways implementation. So, oh, I have it open, there we go. Okay, so you can see that people have already looked and gone through the same processes that we have. And I absolutely agree with the conversations we've had about we need to develop it from within. We don't need a box or anything that's going to come in and say, do this. But we would be absolutely foolish and be a waste of resources not to learn from what other people have done. We climbed such a huge learning curve with the redesign and all the QEPs. Anything we could do to jumpstart things and get past all that would be awesome. So here are the people with the research and math literacies, quant way, stat way, new math ways. Ben kind of talked already about the new vision. And I had attended this talk, and it was actually really good. It also talks about a one-semester prerequisite for getting them into their college-level math credit class. Critical thinking, who can argue with that? Looking forward instead of backwards. So at Diane's meeting where she talked about CPE changes, what we need to ask ourselves is, what do our college students need to be successful? And then develop it based on that criteria and not necessarily a list of competencies. Okay, I think that's all I really had from this. But it's got a lot of information, and everyone here can go ahead and pull this off the website yourself. I have not done anything exciting in terms of preparing for you. But here's the woman whose talk really caught me, and that I wanted to spend some time talking about. I also had wanted to talk about the vision, the math literacy and the algebra literacy, but I think Ben covered it already, so I don't want to bore you by repeating, because I know we have new things to hear. So here is, what is her name? Myra Snell. And she is a finalist in a National Award of Excellence. And here is what the program is: California Community Colleges Success Network. So I have notes and ideas that I would like to share about this. Great. No glasses, sorry. Some of this comes from Achieving the Dream, and they look at the completion of the college class. Oh, yes, I'm remembering. They've got a link here that I love. I'm sitting in this conference in Nashville, Tennessee, and I could have sworn Dan Kesterson was up there in disguise presenting Time is the Enemy, because they used almost the exact same graphic that he used when he did his presentation in Versailles. I'll just get down to the chase. Here's the Time is the Enemy multiplication principle. Basically, let's pretend we've actually solved the problem of student success in developmental math. Let's pretend, oh, there he is. I was just taking your name in vain, so I'm sure your ears are burning, Dan. Let's pretend we've solved developmental math and we're passing students at a rate of 70%. When we're passing the students at a rate of 70%, we're retaining them at a rate of 70%. It would be awesome. We'd all be stars. If you are 3 levels below your transfer math credit, that's 8% only make it through. And that's if we're doing a stellar job. I mean, if students are doing a stellar job, we of course are doing a stellar job. If our students were doing a stellar job, then we would be amazing. 80% success rate, 80% retention rate, and only 21% of students in Math 55 are making it through their college algebra. So one of the things that is really fundamental to this notion is we can't just do what we're doing faster, do what we're doing smarter, do what we're doing, somehow more efficiently, or getting the students to pass better. We actually have to rethink the way that it's done. And one of the best things that you can do is to decrease the pathway and to try and get them through in one semester to be prepared for whatever skills they need. So statistics being, of course, highly relevant and applicable is something to seriously consider. Okay. So, this was their quote: improving course success rates and course-to-course persistence rates will not significantly increase completion rates of transfer level math. If our goal is to improve completion rates, focus on pedagogy is not enough. There's a study that says 80% of community college students declare majors that do not need calculus. So as everyone in this room knows, there's a misalignment between the algebra-based remediation and the non-calculus-based courses like statistics. So according to the Education Advisory Board, about 9% of topics are relevant to college statistics. So if our goal is to increase completion of transferable math courses, students labeled unprepared, we have to shorten the developmental course pipeline and focus on students in majors that are not math intensive. And that is the goal of the California Acceleration Project. The definition is not doing the same thing faster, it's shortening the pipeline and streamlining remediation to better align with transferable courses. In California, the California Acceleration Project supports 23 community colleges. It is a statistics pathway. It's a pre-statistical developmental math course plus the unchanged college level transferable introductory statistics. Do we have introductory statistics that's college transferable? Do you all know? Do we have a statistics class, an introductory? Is it 200 though?
It's 210.
210. Okay. So according to this model, they didn't change that class at all. What they did is they released the college algebra prerequisite and they made this one. Design principles, no standardized curricula or assessments like Statway. They look forward design with the thinking-oriented curriculum. So basically, they did reasoning with data rather than memorization. And then they incorporated remediation into the course with a lot of group work and a lot of projects. I'm trying to figure out what would be relevant here. They did a lot of work in addition to the actual math with the study skills, and they did a lot of professional development with the faculty, including reading books called The College Fear Factor and Brainology, which talked about a fixed versus growth mindset. So thanks for doing that. Yeah, thanks for doing that. All the curriculum materials are homegrown activities with packets given to the students. They use Tinkerplots and StatCrunch for technology, which I think you can get a year for free. And they use a packet put together by their own teachers that they then sell at the bookstore instead of anything that's pre-made. It was pretty neat, the packages they did. And I think I closed my handout. Oh, here they are. Here is one, backpack weights. So this is just a project that they did. And one of the things they did is they actually use real articles and pull real data. And then they tell the students that they need to do some kind of descriptive representation of the data, but they don't always tell the students exactly what they have to do. They don't say, make a scatter plot of the data and connect, They let the students decide how they want to represent it, and then they put posters on the board. And then it was pretty amazing. Each student, each group has one person stay and make a presentation to each group that comes by, and then everybody else goes to all the other groups and they use the sticky notes. So at the end of the poster presentation, everybody has a sticky note from each group. So you have all this instant feedback. And then, sorry, this is distracting. It was really amazing, and these are great resources. They use self-efficacy questions, they use learning study skills and all these other things. So it's not just about the math, even though it does utilize the math and get them into a college-level transferable math course in one semester. Okay. I think there's really no need for me to go into the, into the new vision math pathway. But again, I think that developing something like this would be really valuable to our college. I think that a lot of us who teach these skills kind of laugh about at least one topic. What is the one topic that you laugh about in basic algebra, or, that you're like, do we really need this? Is it dividing polynomials or rationalizing the denominator or whatever it is? But with this type of model, we look backwards and say, What do our students need to be successful? Now, the one thing you have to be careful about with some of this, can I blow this up? Right here. So one of the reasons I kind of agree with Ann about developing it ourselves is if you look at the prerequisites to the class right here, they have use arithmetic operations to solve stated problems, order real numbers across types, use number sense and estimation, and apply the understandings of signed numbers. So there are some minimal requirements. You can't just maybe take somebody who's tested borderline E's, Math 55, and dump them in one of these courses and think it's all going to be hunky-dory. There is some level of thinking that these students have to come to be successful in a one-semester preparation pipeline. But that's where we have our partners, our community partners with ease, that we look at developing how can we best serve our students by using the resources that we have. And that's it. I'm going to go ahead and stop. So I hope, any questions about any of this? I mean, they're not my ideas, but hopefully you have some quick notes on how to find these documents and how to read them more thoroughly yourself. But it was great. It was a great conference, Randy, and we had a lot of information about pathways and two takeaways. One, you can't just fix pedagogy. Pedagogy enough in the classroom will not solve our problem. We already have great teachers. We're already doing great things. And two, we have to develop it ourselves to create what our students need to be successful. Thanks. That's it.
Thanks, Jennifer. Anybody have any questions for Jennifer?
Hey, Drew, can you come here? Is this your guy? Yeah, that's me.
This semester, Benita Tyler created a 6550 course that helped. It took students that were placed into 55 and put them into 65 course with a 50 workshop to help build their skills that they did not get from 55. So I asked them to come present because a lot of what they're doing and the success that they've seen is what we decided as a developmental math committee, and the group voted on a proposal and it passed to implement some of these changes in our developmental shells next semester. So we'll talk about those next, but I wanted them to talk about their 6550 pilot first.
Well, Bonita is really the brains behind most of this. I'm going to start just with a little bit about our motivation of why we decided to kind of take this route, and then Bonita is going to share with kind of the program that was actually built with some of the study skills and some other things that she learned as a fellow for AMATIC. So we've all mentioned today about how terrible the pass rates are and things like that, and we looked at Jefferson data to see exactly how bad is Jefferson's data. And it's similar to nationwide trends, but we wanted to know how bad are we doing. So just to share some of those numbers, I've got our Southwest numbers that we specifically looked at to motivate our campus to want to do something right now with what we have on the books already. Then I have some college-wide data as well. So this is from students that placed into and enrolled in Math 55 in fall 2012. 224 students at the Southwest campus enrolled in Math 55. 81 of them passed, so that's a 36% pass rate. College-wide, it was 965 students, 280 passed for a 29% pass rate. Of those 224 students and 81 students that passed at Southwest, 70 enrolled in Math 65. So we had 86% of our passing students actually enrolled in the next course. And of those 70 students that enrolled, only 22 were successful in Math 65. and that was 31%. So 31% of our Math 55 students that passed actually passed with Math 65. And that was a little shocking for me because we've developed this program of mastery learning, and my initial thought was, well, if they're mastering Math 55 and they've gotten the hang of the program and the sequence, that thing should be pretty good. So 31%, a little shocking for me, and that was kind of where I decided, we need to do something right now to try to start fixing this. College-wide, just to give that number, 241 of the 280 students that passed Math 55 actually enrolled in Math 65, so that's another 86%. So there seems to be a trend that 14% we're losing for whatever reason. And of those 241, 110 were successful, so a little bit better. 45.6% college-wide were successful in the next class. If we step back and look at the total numbers, of the 224 students that enrolled in Math 55 at the Southwest campus, only 9.8% made it through Math 65 in, I believe it was 3 semesters. College-wide, very similar. Of the 965 students in Math 55, 11% made it through Math 65 in 3 semesters. So we certainly have the same national trend that other schools have, but this just kind of puts a reality on what are our actual numbers, and they're not good. So we decided that something needed to be done, and our campus decided that we would try to see, can we eliminate one of the barriers and take students out of Math 55, place them directly into Math 65 with support, and see if they can be successful with that material. And our results, Bonita will talk about those at the end of the what we did part of the presentation, but our results are pretty phenomenal, I think.
Okay, I don't do this well. I don't like microphones. All right, so, does this work? All right, so this is just for Southwest now. Everything that you're looking at here is what we've done on that campus. This is where we are, our before. Everyone knows that sequence. Here's our proposed sequence. So our Math 55 students come into 6.5 with 50. If they pass with an A or a B, they go directly to Math 150 with support. If they are an Associate of Arts student, they would go into our contemporary, our Math 146. And then, of course, we still have our path for Math 85 for those students who do not want to accelerate or who need to go through the 85 into the 150. So the really good thing about this is these Math 55 students go to 150 or 146 in 1 year. Let's say it again, a lot of time. So what were our problems? I don't need to tell you folks this. You're all math teachers. We know what the problems are. They don't have tenacity to persevere. They complain. They blame everyone else but themselves. There's no teacher. They say they don't have a math teacher advising. They say their class, students and faculty say that the class is online, and it's not. There's very little engagement, poor study skills, little initiative to learn independently, and Drew's just given us our dismal success rates. So that's not news. So here's our idea, to take these Math 55 students, put them into 6.5, but with this developmental workshop, Math 50. This is a 75-minute class, which meets twice a week prior to their Math 6.5 class. The attendance counts 50% of the grade. The notebook counts 50% of the grade. And notice that I've underlined that this developmental workshop is to support the acceleration. This isn't where we lecture content. This is where we support the student. We teach them how to be better students. Also in this, we did this in 3 sections, by the way. So there's 2 other teachers teaching this, but I trained them to think of themselves as learning coaches and not teachers. The ideal situation is you would have an instructor that would have the PD they needed to provide the support, which one of the other presenters talked about, that we do need that PD. So here's the nuts and bolts of it. I created a module 0 that went into the Math 6.5 shell, and that was from chapter 9 of our textbook, and it was the, that should say Math 5.5 objectives during the first 3 weeks. So signed numbers, fractions, order of operations, those things they would have gotten in 5.5. So these students did that in 3 weeks, and they finished 6.5 in 13 weeks. We went in day 1 and told them, we were work your tails off, but they made the commitment to accelerate. The activities in the first 4 weeks, I designed the activities and provided lesson plans so that the teachers knew or had some choices of what they would do in their class. And these activities included study skills. There was always an engagement activity, something that got them to interact with each other and with me. Learning community is a big key in this, so that they have under-resourced students feel like they don't belong. By building a learning community, they do feel like they belong. Providing content review. Myself and one of the other instructors, we actually did all the homework in Math 6.5 with our students. So we could go in class and say, okay, this is the one you'll have trouble with. And we'd work it on the board, and they were amazed that we knew what their homework was. Critical thinking, we did application problems. We also had them do error analysis, which is where they take their test and they determine why they got the problem wrong, what the mistake was, how to correct it, and then increasing self-efficacy through a real focus on individual success of the student. This is kind of from my project at UMAC, so I'll just go through this kind of quickly. I kind of feel like this presentation is premature. We don't know how well we've done until they get through their college class. But, so this is what I did. For student engagement, you guessed it, they worked in groups. They were accountable to the members in their groups, they exchanged contact information, and they were required to use it. Look familiar, ladies, guided notes that we wrote. They were required to do the guided notes, and we checked that they did those. 2 of the instructors, we didn't enter content questions in Math 6.5 until we saw the guided notes. So they did have to do them. Student-instructor engagement. This is a little progress report that I use in all my classes, but especially with this one, because you're teaching them to be independent learners. Under-resourced students overestimate their ability to catch up. There'll be 2 modules behind. Oh, I'm going to do that this weekend. I know I can. So they would have to analyze that, and then they met with me one-on-one. During group work, I had many conferences with these students during that Math 50 time. They were also challenged to work hard. In my classes, there's no shortcuts, and they hear that every class. I tell my instructors to tell them, there are no shortcuts. You have to work hard. I didn't get where I am by a shortcut. So we need to stress that with them. Study skills, this is what we use. This is from a Project Access Fellow in the cohort previous to mine, which is free. The notebook and the videos. We are going to tweak it a little and add some of our own material, but study skills are in there. Jennifer, brainology. We use the concepts from Carol DeWeck's book. If you want something to read over the holidays, I highly recommend this. It's a really great book. Growth Mindsets is teaching students that their intelligence is not fixed, that they can grow their intelligence. I speak to them with growth mindset, feedback. They have to talk to me from a growth mindset. They can't tell me they suck at math. They can tell me I don't do math well yet. So we're working on how they think about themselves. We praise hard work and effort. We never praise a student for how smart they are. Here it is, drum roll. We're really proud of this. So we had 61 in our pilot, 36 passed with an A, B, or C. That's 59%. This is just us figuring this out and whittling away. And one of my best students had a coyote of, it was either a 6 or a 7. So there really isn't a correlation. In my class, there was not a correlation. I think Drew looked at the other classes, no correlation between the success of the student and their coyote score. So I think that's a significant point. I did a student satisfaction survey. I wanted to know what they thought about it. We wrangled in 27 students. This question was, if you could go back to the beginning of the semester, would you take this accelerated course? They would. Even with us telling them, we're going to work the tail off. Would you recommend it? They would. So, I mean, this looks good. Now, I think the key thing here is that you understand that Math 50 is not an extra class to teach content. Math 50 is all about support of the student. It is teaching them how to be a more successful student in their math course. That's a fine line. Do you see the difference there? That's why those teachers have to be learning coaches. You can't just take a math teacher and throw them in there. Was that yours, Jennifer, or Ben? You've got to have the PD. You can't have a teacher go in and teach study skills who doesn't know anything about study skills. It's kind of like when we started redesign. We didn't know what we were supposed to do, did we? No. So same thing here. This enables our most fragile students to succeed. And I believe to retain them. We'll see. This conversation will be much more meaningful at the end of the next semester, but we'll track this cohort. True results from the pilot in the spring. My big question, can we replicate it? Can we do what we've done at the Southwest campus with the 3 teachers teaching it with other teachers at Southwest and at other campuses? I honestly don't know. But I know from listening to Ben and Jennifer that a lot of the things they're doing nationwide, we kind of already have in this course. So it looks like we're heading in the right direction. Any questions about this? Jim?
So how did you identify the students that were in the class, and how hard was it to get the students to enroll in the class?
We started, let me use the microphone. Our first attempt was, we didn't want students that had already been through the structure and already had all these mindsets of this is how the class runs and I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm not going to listen to all these things Benita presented. So we started with, we are going to advertise this to SOAR students. Any SOAR student placed in Math 55, we want our SOAR advisors advertising this and encouraging them to enroll in that. So we did that probably for all summer up until the beginning of August. And then like most things at the college, we were faced with the, okay, if we don't get more numbers in these classes, they're gone. So after that, we resorted to just advertising to the general population, student population of, hey, here's this opportunity, and if you'd like to take it, please contact the math department. Other than that, there was no criteria of you have to have this coyote score or anything like that. We wanted to see as part of the program, can this work for any student, not just a student that is, quote, borderline. And as Bonita mentioned, what we found was there was absolutely no correlation between what a coyote score was and how well they did in the class. In fact, the best group of students, and I'm not saying this is a trend, I'm just saying the best group of students was a 7. Coyote 7. The worst group of students was a Coyote 11. So no trend, I don't think, of can this just be for students that are on the edge of making Math 65. I don't think that's an issue.
Okay. So you're doing the 150-100 pilot in the spring?
That's stage 2, yeah. So stage 2 is, can we take these students into Math 150 with 100 without getting Math 85?
So are you treating the Math 100 the same way that you treated the 50 this semester, or it's more of a support plan?
Mostly, yes. They're going to get some of the delivery of Math 85 that they're missing, some of those crucial things that they're going to miss in Math 85, but a lot of the same things where it's going to be support and reinforcement rather than lecture time.
Right now, because I'm going to be teaching one of those courses, right now it's set up, there is going to be content in there because there are some topics that they haven't gotten in 65 that we need to work on. And so the grade will be based on attendance, again, notebooks, listening to videos before they come in. We have a 150 set up that's like the redesign, so it's going to be set up very much like them, to where the first part will do the 100, and the second part will be considered, we'll go to a lab and work on the class, so that way that the 150 class is exactly like a 150 in a regular classroom, so nobody thinks that it was watered down or anything to help them. And then that beginning would definitely be just a support. But there will have to be some content in there.
Just to kind of bridge the gap.
Yes.
And I don't think this really came out in the presentation, but the course that we used for Math 65, the same Math 65 course used throughout the college. Only 2 modifications were made. We added the module 0 that Bonita talked about to bring in some things like fractions and sign numbers. And the only other modification, and Mickey will talk about this in the last part of our meeting today, was we added due dates. We said, you have till this day to master this test, and if you don't do that, you have failed the course. And you can see from our results that it wasn't a barrier.
And that's my question, what happens to the students who fail? Do they go back to 55? Do they go to 65? Do they get to keep any modules? Do they start back at the beginning?
I don't know if we've decided about whether or not they're keeping any modules. That's kind of a policy issue we'll iron out. But they can request to come back into the pilot a second time. They send him a letter saying, this is how I would make changes so that I believe I would be successful, so that they're thinking about what happened, and what changes they would make. We're just not letting them back in if they haven't evaluated their work, because it's based on hard work and effort. What was the other question?
Well, will the other ones who don't redo the pilot, will they go back to 55?
Yes, or retest. They could take their Coyote and move up.
Yeah, we've had 3 have petitioned to be re-enrolled in the class. 2 were approved, 1 was not. And we've had 1 that I know of for sure that was not going to pass the class that took the Coyote again and actually tested into Math 85. So, yeah.
I'm hard of hearing, so you may have answered all of this. One of the things that you have in this program is you have a lot of processes and activities that focus on engagement and the mental processes that support the content. Not only math, but everyone seems to have trouble with so focused on content that they never get around to the engagement, the mental processes that are supporting the content. I'm thinking about, when you think about other people doing what you've done, which is fabulous, have you thought about how you're going to do professional development to help people? There's so much content that I have found that a lot of instructors just have a lot of trouble focusing on what are the learning mental processes for engagement. Am I making any sense to you?
We are thinking about what professional development, if we can replicate, and it comes to the point that this is something we want to do on a larger scale, we would have to do professional development. And one thing I would want to do I would want faculty members want to do this and not just be assigned this, because it's a different sort of work with students. You have to be willing to engage with the students, and coaching is different than lecturing calculus. You know, it's a whole different, that's why we're wondering, can we replicate it? Is this going to happen in other ways, or is it the 3 teachers who are teaching it? We're all moms and we're real pushy, and we say, you will do this work. Is that what's doing it? We don't know yet. But if it goes to other teachers besides the 2 that are helping me right now, we will have to train them. I'd like to see them read the book on growth mindset, and then every faculty person that's teaching that class do the homework with their students. Set up a notebook. Let the students see, I do it. I make the time, so I think that they're not grading papers. I would think that would be something we could kind of require them to do, so they're experiencing it. You can require them to do. They're experiencing it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that's right. One of the things that I have found is there's almost as big a learning curve for content and skills instructors in terms of the mental process for thinking about the content so that the engagement stuff, you had a great list right there, it's great. It's a huge curve for a lot of faculty, even if they want to, I mean, you guys must have a lot of background and experience with this whole engagement, mental processes underneath, because a lot of folks just do not, who want to do these things, but they really have to learn a lot about how to engage a student. Yeah, you're answering my question. I think it's fabulous.
I think you all really hit on something. And when Shannon was teaching our pilot, she actually had a student fail twice, and she sat down and watched her take the test. And she had all the answers, but it was how do you get it in there? She was absolutely a coach right there with her, and unlocked that, and within 2 weeks, she was through 3 modules. It was like, it's just that coach thing, but then I'm like, how do you teach that? But it is so, if you can teach being a coach, that's amazing. I think you all done a great thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're ahead of the schedule just a little bit. I wanted to talk about the new changes that we have in place that we're going to be bringing up in spring. It was a proposal that was sent out to everybody, so you read that proposal, made comments, we took a vote, and it passed pretty well. And
Maybe before we talk about these, can I ask just like a general question?
Oh my gosh, I guess. I took your flash out, Nikki, it's right there on the.
That's okay, I've gotten that.
go ahead.
That's one of the things I guess Diane asked is what time frame are we looking at doing some of these things? I mean, Benita, how long did it take you all to develop Math 6550? And how quickly were you able to offer it? Like, did you say in February, let's try this, and then you all spent the summer developing it, so you kind of offered it before you had it all the ducks in a row?
Well,
Or how long was it in the works?
Much faster than we would probably believe. In May, we talked about it. We got the green light from Dr. Elkins, and we put it together over the summer.
But I had been doing a lot of this in the first phase of my pilot for my AMATIC project. So I had been playing with it in a 5-5 class, taking back class time. So that's what that was about. We just expanded it, but it was on summer.
And you all worked out the credit hour with the instructors. That's one thing I wonder if we would be able to do on our downtown campus is the course load issue. So you want it to be a 2 credit hour course. Is that how it's set up for spring? 2 credit hours? So it's 5 credit hours total, right?
Right.
And then, that counts in faculty load like any other thing, right? I mean, it's nothing special?
It's counting as six
Which is
contact
6
hours.
hours of meeting time.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
You're meeting like a 6-hour course.
So when you
The
look
same
at
as your
scalability in
150, 100.
downtown, I'm wondering if we can offer pilots of it for the fall, or not pilots, but if we could, offer at least a section or something of it in the fall on the other campuses. Because it's gonna be a while before we get any kind of statistics course or something together. It seems like, I don't know how fast that stuff goes. Thanks, sorry, I just didn't wanna.
No, that's fine.
Okay, I put this up on the PowerPoint, but you have it on your sheet of paper. I think I wrote it on there in changes so that you would have it there as well. But this was all, I kind of made it into bullets, but it was sent out as a proposal in the email, so all this is in there. There were a few little details, but I'm sure there's going to be more that we need to talk about today. But I wanted to hash a few of them out with just a small group, and it ended up being really small. It was me and Drew yesterday. So then we'll talk more, I'm sure, today. The changes in the developmental education, we have talked about this for a very long time. This isn't something that just came up. We have hashed around due dates, I think just about every meeting that we've had for several years now, about how to implement this, how we're going to do this, how's it going to work. And when Benita did her pilot, it seemed to work really well. And we've heard over and over and over again, developmental students don't do optional. Bottom line is, we don't do optional if we really look at it and be honest with ourselves. A lot of times, anything that's optional, if we got a lot on our plate, it goes to the back, whether we think we need to have it done or not. So it's whatever needs to be done right now. So they put the due dates in. So we will have specific due dates for the module test. And any student who's not taking the test by that date will complete the test in class regardless of that homework for that module has been completed. I know there were some concern that the students wouldn't pass it, but that's very much like our traditional class. We have a test date, and you take that test on that date regardless if they have completed the homework or not. So everybody in class on that day, it kind of sets the class tone to be on the same track. It allows the teacher then, if everybody's on the same track, to talk about problems or any mini lectures that you want to do. It kind of fosters that a little bit, and then on this particular day, everybody will take that test. So on there, instead of having one test, you'll have two different tests. One that'll be an in-class test, and one that'll be, what did you all call it? In-class and a mastery test, and that would be your retake. So everybody would be ready to take that in-class test on that day. If the student fails the test on that day, he or she will have 2 weeks to retake that test. So now everybody else is moving forward though, because that's what classes do. You have to move forward or you're not going to finish. This idea that we have now, I think, kind of has hurt students as far as this even our minimal pace. Even though we have a required pace, it doesn't seem to be affecting any of the students' mindset at all. So now they've got 2 weeks to retake the test. If they want to retake it, it kind of goes back to what we were doing before. They'll have to finish all of their homework to 85% or better if they haven't done it already. And they'll have to do the test corrections assignment to 100%. This, I think, will push students to actually get on the other. I always talk to my students about doing the 100% anyway. For that reason, if they have to go back, that's one thing that they don't have to go back and work on. But they have to do that, and then if they don't, then they'll get one more retake. Again, they have to go back and make sure all their homework is to 100, and they have to do the attempt 3 prep assignment to 100. So that's very much the same. The deal is, if they don't show up on in-class day, they get a 0 for that test. So then they have to go through the retake process. So they opted to not take it, so they opt that first go around, they get a 0. They'll have to do the test corrections to 100, which means they have to do the entire assignment. And they have to make sure all their homework is to an 85%. If they failed the test on the first time and they chose not to retake it to mastery, we're moving off that mastery level and going into an average now. So we're kind of combining, because we've listened. I know some folks don't exactly think that, but we've listened to everybody's comments, their concerns that they've had about traditional versus redesign, and we've tried to kind of mesh the good of both worlds together, and that's kind of where this proposal came from. So they could choose not to retake if they want to, but if they're going to retake, they need to do it within those 2 weeks. After those 2 weeks, that closes. There's no more going back to that module. They close. They have to move forward after that, and they'll receive the highest of whatever they took. So if they took all 3 times, they'll take whatever their highest is. Like I already said, the mastery, the module is not required. We talked about midterms and final exams. One of the things that I saw in my 150 class was the idea the students, especially when they came from a redesign, they could not understand that they only had 1 time to take that test. And their learning how to prepare for 1 test was not very adequate. So because they always knew that they could just keep retaking as many times as they needed to get where they wanted. So they didn't know how to study. So we changed the midterm and the final exam to only taken once. However, that midterm is not worth any more than a regular test. Now, it's a little bit different with 55, but that was because 55 had so many tests, but I'll show you what we considered on that one. And, but the final exam is still worth a hefty score, but they only take it once. But we thought with the midterm only taken once, that would help them learn how to prepare and be ready for the final exam. Any questions about that so far? Yes.
So if they miss the date that the midterm is given, do they still have that 2-week window to take it, or do they just get a 0 for that test?
I would think that would be the same as if they had an excuse.
So you just.
You know, in my class, if they miss a final exam, they're gonna get a 0 unless they have a documented reason why they missed that exam. So I think that would work the same way, and the student could use a I think the teacher would make that as a makeup.
Okay, so will the midterm close like the other tests will close after a certain time period?
Well,
Or like would we have, if they miss, would we have a?
the teachers can always change those times.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, teachers could change those times.
I just want to share what you all said. Because classes are Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Friday, they're going to just have the test deadlines be that Friday, I think at the end of the week. So the midterm would be, say, October, whatever that Friday. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
And the student can always test early if they want to, right?
Yes, the student can always test, they can still move forward quickly if they wanted to. So they still have the option to move forward as quickly as they want, finish it halfway through and move on to the next class. So they still have that option. It's just now they don't have the option to wait until the end of the semester and come to the lab and try to get 3 modules done in a week. Some of the details, the 2 big details that we discussed yesterday, Drew and I, were rollover. We kind of batted back and forth what was the good and the bad. On the spring 2015 and this next semester, everything would roll over just as is. Because, I mean, that's what the students know, that's what they understand. Everything was mastery level. And if you remember the rollover policy was they had to completed that module. If not, even if they got all the homework done, they still, and didn't pass the test, or they took the test and didn't pass it, then they would still have to do that entire section when they came back to the next class. So the only thing that actually got moved from semester to semester was completed, mastered sections. So that will be the same. Now, the question came up at that point, then what do you do about those people when they come in as far as an attendance grade and all that? And we just felt like that was up to the instructor, how they wanted to handle that student moving forward in the class. I would give notebook grades and attendance grades, and that's kind of what we're hoping that people will start doing, is giving a notebook and attendance grade. When my students came in that had 3 modules done, then I would tell them, well, for you to get your attendance and your notebook grade, then you need to have 2 sections done this week to get your grade. So it wasn't that they had to do the same 2 sections, and they didn't automatically get it because that module was done. For them to get credit for this class that time, they had to show that they were making progress, even though they were ahead of the game. So I didn't want them to wait to the very end. The fall 2015, of course, we have this idea that we've got students that would have mastered maybe module 1, maybe they failed module 2, and they, mastered module 3. And I think that we should do the same thing, just only move forward those things that they mastered. So if they mastered 1 and 3, then they can move over that, but then they've got to go back over and do 2. Now, if they want to keep that grade again, and they didn't master it, as far as this class is concerned, they can still do that. If they pass the class at the end, then so be it, then they're fine and they can move on. But if they did not pass the course, but they did have some modules that were completed, then they can move those forward again.
Just to clarify, when you say master the module, that means their highest test score was a 75 or better?
Right, the same as what we're doing.
So we don't care about homework grades, just as long as the test grade?
Yeah, that's the only thing we ever rolled over anyway, was test grades, unless you specifically wanted to, yeah.
And while we have time to think about it, anybody who's rolling over from fall to spring to fall, I think at some point we need to have something in place for multiple repeaters. Whether it's M6, M65,
Yes.
MC50, something. And I think that now that we're making these changes to have this and we're gonna carry forward, I mean, it's not like a sieve where you take the course 5 times and eventually you get all your modules. And I think we need to say, if you fail 2 times, you have
you
to
start
go into
over.
this supported class or something.
Okay.
I just,
Definitely
anyway.
something we can think about.
What
Yes,
happens to a student that, for instance, a 55 student who finished module 5 and is starting in January module 6, finishing up 55 and then flipping over to 65 in the end of January, how does these deadlines work when you close the modules in 65 and they aren't ready to start 65 until, the end of January?
Well, I'm gonna, I would think, and Drew can correct me if I'm wrong, they're gonna be moved, if they finished a 55 class and they moved into a 65, regardless of where they came, the 65 shell is a different shell than the ones that, it's the same shell, but he can change and take due dates off of that, right?
Right.
So the shell that they put them in is different from individual classes. So he can take that shell and have due dates taken off, since it wouldn't apply to them, since they're ahead of the game, per se, because they're not specifically in that class.
Yeah, Bob and I create what are called continuation course sections that are their own sections. So we can modify those however we need to. And then I suppose that an instructor can set up an individual plan with a student of, what's your goal? If your goal is to finish Math 65, then here's the expectation, here's the dates you need to hit. Or if it's just do as much as I can, then maybe the expectation is 2 sections a week, and based on that, here's your test date. All of those things can be set up individually. And we, of course, be asking more of our instructors than we have been in the past. But
Because the instructor is setting the due dates
For
for
those
each
students, they would
student,
be.
because this student is starting February 1st, this student is starting February 15th,
yeah, or the
this
students
student is starting
March 10th.
March.
They all have
15th.
different goals. So.
They'll
And
all
you
have
don't
different
have
due
to,
dates.
and you don't have to set those due dates, since this is a continuation course.
But they don't do optional. So if due dates are good,
I
they need to.
understand, but they paid for the 55 class, so I guess that's up to you. They're not officially, because they get to choose if they want to roll over to 65 or not.
Well, true.
They get to choose that, so they didn't specifically pay for that class, but the goal is that they would be able to finish and save money to have that. But they enrolled in 55, so they could choose not ever to go into 65. So I'd hate to penalize them if they choose to go in and work on it.
So they would not have
But I don't
specific.
think we feel like it's a penalty. We feel like a due date is a good thing. That's not a penalty, right?
I agree, if you enrolled in that class to begin with.
No.
Maybe you give them target dates instead. But I think what Mickey's saying is you wouldn't want to give somebody a 0, if somebody who's accelerated, you wouldn't want to give them a 0 for a test if they don't meet a specific deadline, because then, they're ahead of schedule.
But I'm saying they have their own schedule.
Right.
They have their personal schedule, not the class schedule, but the personal schedule.
Got it.
Because my personal schedule didn't start on January 12th, it started on March 12th.
But maybe their goal isn't to finish 65, maybe
No,
it's
it's
just to
not.
get as many modules
Right.
as they go.
Right.
That's the case.
Right.
Right, so it's,
Why penalize them?
if I'm letting module 1 be 4 weeks, or whatever you said it was, then it's 4 weeks from March the 12th. If I don't start module 1 till March 12th, then it's 4 weeks later that I'm done with module 1.
At the same time, too, we've got students that aren't accelerating. They've actually taken this other class 1 or 2 times already, and they need some kind of benchmark, otherwise they're just done.
And if they're a student who isn't going to finish the course, if it's their goal to finish the course and they need those deadlines to help them finish the course. If their goal is not to finish the course, they're not gonna get a grade for it anyway, if they're in the continuation section. So it won't really matter whether we give them the 0 or not. So I'm with you, I think the deadline is good. If we give them the 0, it won't hurt their GPA or anything. I mean, it wouldn't weren't going to pass the course and move on anyway, so maybe the zero or the deadline will be a little bit more motivating.